Super. Welcome to the August 21st prep session for the FHIR Connectathon C-CDA Implementation-a-thon track. Today we are going to be covering quite a few things. We have a brief recap of some of the resources that are available and the plan that we basically have for these prep sessions and for the two-day agenda in Atlanta. And then I will dig into our plan for sample document generation. Kudos to Rochelle, who really gave us some good guidance at the end of last time to suggest that we'd have a more meaningful interoperability experience by generating some example scenarios ahead of time to help organize everybody around, well, what documents should we make and what information should we put in them so that our samples will be more comparable and more focused on what we're trying to demonstrate. So I'll go over that plan, where we stand with that, and then we'll talk about what I'm calling our workflow workshop. You'll get a glimpse of what I have planned for Q1 on Saturday, and we will talk about what we're going to do to cover this topic of C-CDA documents being used to reduce the burden of quality measurement. And then very briefly, I'll cover what our plans are around care plan documents and C-CDA to C-CDA on FHIR and US core mapping. Here we are in the overall schedule of the prep calls. I think I have some place where I keep some notes, but I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put us into big screen mode there so that it's maximized as possible. Today we're going to run through the things you heard on the agenda, and then we have 3 more of these sessions as we run up to September 14th in Atlanta. We've covered this before, but I want you to know that these presentations are all loaded on the Confluence site where these prep sessions are recorded, and you can go there. All of the links are available that way. If you pull one of the presentations, you can have a quick reference to the Confluence site itself, the Dropbox that we're using where we're collecting a lot of resources. I've already started a support folder there where I've been putting a lot of different little helpful specs and things out there. I think Aslam was writing into the Zulip channel earlier today about where can I get the care team templates and the clinical note templates, and they're all available in that Dropbox where I put the companion guide that's under ballot right now. So these are helpful tips and tricks. We've been getting good activity on the Zulip channel recently. I've been trying to go there at least twice a day. If you have questions or you just are looking for help with anything, try the chat stream. We have a special stream set up for the implementation-a-thon. You can go there, and there's quite a lot of activity starting to happen in Zulip. We do have the Google Drive where you guys are doing your attendance right now. That's going to be an area where we have shared, a folder where we have documents that everybody can write in at the same time. It's pretty helpful. And I have some resources around US CDI and how to access and use the ONC scorecard. We've also posted materials that help you understand what's available in terms of the balloted C-CDA R2.1 to FHIR STU4 mappings. You might be interested in that. It's hard to find, so this link takes you into the Confluence site for the service-oriented architecture work group, and that's where you can get that information. And we also have access to some transforms that the Lantana group has put out there that are specific to pharmacy care plans, but they have some general relevance, so I just gave you access to those as well. Lots of good information available to help you dig in on understanding the data elements that are in the set called US Core V1, US CDI, Core Data for Interoperability version 1. And this is what we are really focused on in terms of getting this base comparable capability for all implementers to be able to make these data elements in their CDA documents. So it's going to be a big focus of the examples and samples that we work on in Atlanta to make sure that more of us are coming closer together on how we represent laboratory, medication, patient demographics, everything, that you see on this slide right here. The care team members and the clinical notes are a new idea, not in terms of clinical notes as whole documents, but clinical notes in terms of how would you represent narrative clinical notes within the context of a clinical note document. So we have lots of focus on that. I'll show you some stuff if you missed last week where we covered that last week, and I'll go over it a little bit at the end of today's session. There's a great resource available in the Google Drive that's called Documents by Sections, or Sections by Document, something like that. There's only 3 files out there, so if you get to the Google Drive, you'll find it. And this is a resource that we've built to help you more easily visualize the similarities and differences in terms of the content that's available and used in the 11 different types of structured documents defined under Consolidated CDA. The link is here. I'll also put this in the chat because I thought I could do that easily. I put this in the chat last week, and it's a nice opportunity to just take a minute and go out and hit this document and take a look as you're preparing to move from just the ability to generate C-CDs into the ability to start to generate these encounter level documents. We're on the cusp of being able to make that happen. And so this little quick tip sheet, I think, will be really, really valuable in terms of thinking about how to start moving in that direction. This implementation-a-thon track is going to use specific exercises, more so than we ever had in the past, and we've allocated more time by creating a joined session that will be spanning lunch, the Q2, the Q3 time block, plus your lunchtime period will give us more time to concentrate on looking at examples and comparing them, talking about them, really getting at the heart of some of the questions that implementers still have about these basic US CDI data elements and how to represent them. We will be digging into try and clarify more about the creation and consumption workflows for documents. It seems that it's not very standard yet, that people don't know what to expect in terms of what the steps are for really causing documents to be generated or causing documents to be absorbed into EMRs. And so we have a workshop that's going to focus on adding some more clarity around what's possible and what are implementers doing today. Last week, I told you that we will not be focusing on the use of C-CDs, but that exposed a big problem about that expectation, in that right now, C-CDs are the only type of CDA documents, C-CDA documents, that implementers are really readily sharing. And so while we are pushing to shift towards having the capability to produce encounter documents, we really realized that of the, I think, something like 36 million C-CDA documents that are out in the care quality network today, flowing through there as of that volume was measured in April of 2019, almost 100% of them are C-CDs. And so polling our implementer community last week and just thinking about this more, I've revised our strategy so that the examples that we can make and the samples that we'll be asked to produce also have options for creating C-CD documents that are specific to particular encounters. So a way of saying this C-CD or this patient summary is generated as a result or at the end of a particular encompassing encounter. How do we go about doing that? So I've revised our strategy a little bit that allows for people to both participate in that way as well as starting to experiment with the creation of other things like progress note and history and physical consult note, etc. This new focus on clinical notes and care team information is going to be something that we haven't really had before, and a little bit more around basic provenance. Our goal, as I said earlier, is to increase the consistency and the accuracy with which we represent U.S. CDI data elements, and in general, improve the set of document samples that we have available, because everybody learns so much more from being able to look at examples. We want to clarify what can really be expected and what the options are for document creation and document consumption. How do we really get that end-to-end flow of data? And then socialize some of the material that's available in the newly balloted companion guide so that everyone will be more aware of the guidance that's being provided there as we go through reconciliation of that material. And finally, we will be continuing to focus on how we inform ourselves of what kind of testing and validation practices are out there, what's going on with the ONC scorecard, and how do we better align our expectations on that. The two-day track will be organized in quarters as it has been in the past, but as I said, we'll be combining Q2 and Q3 so that we get more time to focus on generating specific examples and talking about the XML that's created and what the challenges are. We also will be having a session called Q5 on Saturday, where we will be sneaking in kind of an informal discussion to focus on care plans and the mapping between C-CDA and FHIR. So if you don't have dinner plans, or if you have dinner plans, cancel them. Plan on having pizza with us on Q5 Saturday evening, and we'll just keep the party going with a focus on care plans there and mapping. On Sunday, we have our provenance discussion in Q1. We do hope to draw participants from the FHIR side of the Connectathon as well, to have this larger discussion around data provenance and what does that mean in terms of where we can go, what we can expect in terms of representing basic provenance requirements. And then in the long Q2, Q3 session, we'll get into the author representation. We'll practice with and take questions around, look at what does it mean to represent a clinical notes section or individual note activities within a C-CDA document, and how do we represent care teams and care team members. And we'll close the day with a discussion run by Matt Ron around the C-CDA rubric and the US CDI process, which will be an evolutionary attempt to continually introduce more and more of these data elements that we can all come together around and represent in a common way. Let's talk about the sample documents. I have released, and you'll see information about this on Zulip. It's also posted, the scenario document is posted in the Dropbox now. We are still working on it a little bit with the clinicians on FHIR work group to finalize a couple of the clinical details, but there's a lot of information that's already ready out there. It is a robust cross-paradigm storyboard, which gives you more than just the nuts and bolts of what needs to be in one particular CDA document. You really get a longitudinal view of what's going on with Ted. Oh, look, his name got changed. His name is Ted Levin now. I didn't update the slide. His name used to be Ted Williams, but his name is Ted Levin now. And you get to know this gentleman and some of the other people who are involved in his care team and doctors that take care of him and what's going on with his condition and with his situation. And then at certain points in time, we'll be focusing on how to represent a CCD that would be relevant to his what was going on in his situation as of a particular point in time, a specific visit. So we do support the option of generating an encounter-oriented CCD at that point in time, but we also have the opportunity to try and make a progress note or a history and physical to summarize what the story would look like after his visit to his primary care physician for his annual checkup on March 5th, 2018. And the story basically gives you all the details for being able to do that. It's an opportunity for us to differentiate what it means to create a patient summary versus an encounter summary, explore some use of the section time range entry that can be included in a section to indicate that there are business rules for limiting the information that is in that particular C-CD. And we'll look at how to use a clinical notes section and note activity entry in the context of that. So there's a lot of good material that's narrative so that you have material to work on doing clinical notes. Lots of different US CDI data elements to explore representing, and the bonus opportunity is to establish a referral note from that same information. So at that annual visit, Ted gets referred to his endocrinologist, and we have an opportunity as a bonus activity to make that referral note. Later on in the story, February 11th, 2019, some stuff has changed with Ted's situation, and we have another point in time where we'll be looking at creating either a progress note or a consultation note or one of those encounter-oriented CCDs to summarize this new updated situation with his care. Again, we're going to focus on how do you include care team information in the body of the document, how do you use that section time range entry, clinical notes or note activity, represent the different US CDI, and then the bonus activity here on day 2 will be around exploring the use of author and author timestamps, some persistent ID challenges that help us consider how to do reconciliation of medications, problems, and allergies. And that really helps us use this new template that's introduced in the companion guide that's called Basic Provenance Author. So you can pull this document now from multiple places. It's one of the resources that's listed in here, and it's available in the Dropbox, and it's available on Zulip. And I will fix Ted's name here on this slide when we get done today. We are hoping to get commitment early to know whether we have got enough content creators participating in the implementation of Thon, that we will have good coverage of being able to see some of these documents produced. I've put names here on this slide. These are folks from all of the major EHRs who have attended in the past, and we're hoping that that folks would be able to let us know if these are document types that they would be able to represent. We're also looking for people who are willing to be content consumers and step up to the plate in terms of maybe being able to demonstrate, not just view, because this is something that everybody can do, but we're interested in content consumers who may be able to help push the envelope on how to demonstrate so we can see document import, section import, or data import, and in terms of these documents. So I'm going to open up the line. Technically, right now, no one is closed out of the line, but I would be interested to ask at this moment for anybody who is on the phone and coming to the event, if there are documents that you would be willing to, or to kind of like commit that we could count on you to coming with some samples or generating samples at the IAT. I'm looking out in the question land here, and I see that Sonia has asked about the intention of the prep sessions to ready us for the actual event. If you are not able to attend the implementation-a-thon in Atlanta, it's okay. Obviously, there's a lot of great face-to-face collaboration that happens during those 2 days. But if you're only able to dial in right now and join us virtually leading up to the event, I still think that the resources that you're finding out about, the examples that you hear about, they provide you with great access to the resources that everybody else will be working with. And then after the event, these folders on Google and on Dropbox will be populated with samples that go along with the agenda that I'm showing. So the resources will continue to mount up. Even if you're not able to join us, you'll be able to take take a peek, take a look at some of the samples that people are generating, and you'll be able to learn and follow up from there. And try the Zulip chat. That's another way, if you're not at the Implementation-a-thon, that you would still be able to ask some questions, know that you'll have a focused group of people thinking about things for 2 days. So try to join us on the Zulip chat, see what kind of activity is going on, and what questions are being asked and answered there. That would be another good way to get a little something out of it, even if you're not in Atlanta. Rochelle, will your group be generating examples? Is that something Diameter Health could be signing up for? What kinds are you guys coming to create?
So we're Dynamic Health, but I know you said it's Diameter and Dynamic get confused.
I do that all the time. I'm the worst offender. I'm going to write it here, Dynamic.
We will be generating C-CDAs. Özlem, can you talk through the test script that you were reviewing and let her know where we stand there?
Sure. We are planning to generate CDs, and then also we have referral notes. I was reviewing it. Since we are not EHR system, the data usually gets deposited into our database. That's how we create the C-CDAs, or like C-CD or any type of CDA documents. So this time it's much better, for the visualization. I think there are some codes, but we may have a little bit trouble if the code is not there, just the narrative text and etc. So those are going to be a little bit trouble if you are going to exchange the data with other systems. But so far, you were asking, or not you, but in the task for sections, narrative data. So maybe this is expected. So if you don't have the code, and then Googling, we can probably find room codes for the just text that you represent, even though it might be coded section. We may want to represent just the text with the reference.
Yes.
So we are trying to get a C-CDA, maybe some workarounds if we cannot find the proper code easily online. And again, I cannot really point to specific ones since I didn't start inserting the data, but those are the goals for the Implementation-a-thon for Atlanta.
Excellent. And that's absolutely the direction we'd like to see people take, because that's a real challenge. Sometimes we just don't have the right codes. So using section.txt and the note activity template, if you take a look, I was just in the middle of responding to you on Zulip. I'll give you the pointer again to the companion guide where the notes section and the note activity entry template are both documented. And I encourage you to utilize that as the mechanism for telling the story when you have information in your database, but no codes to populate your typical structured discrete data.
Perfect. So that would be awesome. That's what I was asking. And then as far as I understand, again, I didn't see the specs, but we have an individual note section. However, note activity can be applied to every individual entity, every individual section. Is that correct? That is my understanding.
Yes, that's right. And I'm going to to answer that question, I'll bounce down to this picture right here that I've created as just a quick visualization. Inside of a clinical note document, you can use a notes section where you can put narrative notes right in the section.txt element. You further have this entry template that's defined where you can put narrative notes that you might want to have as an entry within the context of this. So for example, if your note section has, say, 5 different notes, different paragraphs that come from different areas and they're all in one section, you can sort them out by representing each one of them with a different note activity. Or in a structured section where you have like a procedure information, but you have a note about that procedure, you can use the note activity entry to augment that discrete data and include the narrative note attached right along with it. So there's the three different possibilities for how to use these templates to add more narrative context.
Perfect. I think that's going to apply to us pretty well. So we are going to be exercising those 2 plus 3, like, because notes is the main one, and it's going to help us a lot. And also care team is another one, which is in the body, and then the time section. So we are going to exercise on those and then send you data. Like when we come there, we are going to give C-CDA mostly with those sections in it.
Great. Thank you so much. We're so glad that we can count on you guys to be there. And I'm looking, just scanning the attendance list today to see if we have anyone else from, I see Michael Clifton is in. Michael, how are you guys coming at Epic? Are you guys going to be able to help us out with generating some examples as a content creator?
So we are not actually able to attend in person for the implementation-a-thon track this particular go-around. But if it's something where we are needed to create some samples, I think that we might be able to submit a few. So that's something that we can consider. I know just looking at some of the options that we have, not all of them are things that I think we would be producing just for this particular implementation-a-thon. Specifically, I don't believe we'd be doing any of the FHIR stuff necessarily for this particular go-around, but that's just more due to time constraints for me to be able to create that and get that prepped. But we could have some of these out. So the patient and encounter summaries,
What kind of encounter summaries are you guys making?
Can you clarify what you're specific?
Like, do you make progress note, history and physical, consultation, any of the notes that are bound to a particular encompassing encounter?
So we definitely produce progress notes, and I think discharge summaries we would be able to easily get in there as well. I'm not quite certain about all the other types. I think those are the two that we primarily focus on. And then I'm not sure, I mean, technically referrals are not exactly encounter summaries, so that wouldn't count. But we have our referral summary functionality as well that we could do.
Awesome.
So the big thing though, we are working on doing or spiffing up our clinical notes stuff, but we don't currently have the note template fully implemented, so that's something we probably won't be participating in terms of a content creation aspect. If that changes within the next month, then we can definitely submit something, but I'm not sure we'll be able to turn around anything at that rate. Okay.
But that's still really helpful that you could contribute a few sample documents. We would really appreciate that. We'll miss you in Atlanta. Are you going to be there, but just working on the FHIR side, or
no?
Will you not be?
I personally won't be there. We will have some of our representation for FHIR related tracks, and I will be there after Monday. Unfortunately, just due to partially my schedule and then our company's schedule, we have some things going on that will kind of keep us from being able to be there that weekend, or some of us from being able to be there over the weekend. But we'll be there for the majority of the week.
Oh, great, great. All right, well, I'm going to keep pressing on people, and I think that's really helpful. Thank you very much. I think I have heard from Meditech that they are only going to be at the table over in a FHIR track, and they won't be able to cover the C-CDA side of things, but they also volunteered to produce some samples, and I think that will be really helpful, because if we don't have content creators, it's very hard for us to handle all the rest of the Connectathon. The consumers are really dependent on there being content creators to be able to get us jump started there. So I'll continue to reach out to everybody, but if you could keep us on your radar, and I'll make a Dropbox folder. Is Dropbox okay for you? You have access, can get into Dropbox? Some people can use Dropbox, some people prefer Google.
Dropbox works for me.
Okay, great. So I'll make sure that the Dropbox folder is there for EPIC, and whatever you can contribute, even though you won't be there, we sure will appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to move on to tell you guys a little bit about the workflow workshop. And for those who won't be in Atlanta, let's think about how we could make progress on this also, maybe in the background, so that you can contribute a little bit. Right now, there are so many different possibilities for how CDA documents are both triggered to be created, shared, and then ultimately received and consumed. And so I have been trying to come up with names, some labels, where we could start to try and have some words that help us distinguish different possibilities. And I'm hoping to run a little bit of a workshop so that we can ultimately end up with some label names like this that we can somehow agree what it means and what we're talking about when we say those terms. And I have fleshed out 6 different terms that are floating around creating and sharing documents, from a push to a pull, an on-demand, a kind of a portal-based flow, something that I call middleman, where the documents are provided, actually produced, and then provided and stored with somebody else, who then becomes the provider of where you would go to get those documents, as well as the notion of sort of an assembler, which is a system that gets a bunch of data from a variety of places, and then when asked about it, can assemble a document on the fly there. So I don't know if these words and these concepts are right or wrong yet, but there's a survey out there that's available on Zulip about content creation and content consumption. It asks a few questions. It's not too burdensome, under 10 questions. It only takes a few minutes to complete. But we're trying to get a feel for where different implementers are with how they produce and consume and support production and consumption of documents. The other thing that we've run into in talking to people about this is the distinction between how manual the process is versus how automated it may be. Are these events that cause CDA documents to be created, do they happen automatically based on other clinical events that happen within the EHR environment, or is it something that's more of a manual triggering process? Are they consumed in an automated way, or is there some manual or maybe human intervention that is required to have that consumption happen? So we're trying to get a picture of this. We're going to run a little workshop where I've started with some drawings, and I'm going to encourage people. I think I'm going to bring big Post-it note, whiteboard-sized pieces of paper and break up in teams so that people can help us to understand what transactions their system are supporting. What does it look like to actually get to the place where something causes a document to be created so that it could be shared with a consumer? What are the tasks that take place once a document arrives at a system? I'm hoping that people will have big, looping arrows here to actually describe the steps that their system goes through to consume a record consume a document and either attach it to a record or consume a section or consume some discrete data. What does that look like? Are there query patterns where content consumers need to trigger a creator to actually make a document, maybe go through some steps to create the document and then share it back with them? I have about 6 or 8 different patterns that I've drawn that will trigger ideas in people who would then, for their system, write down, what does this look like? What different options does their EHR support, or are their systems looking for, hoping for to be in existence, so that we can start to have some shared understanding about what the possibilities are. For the folks on the phone, let me know, what do you think in a conversation is just going to be one quarter of work, but what do you think you would be able to contribute to a conversation like this? Do you have capabilities that you could describe, or do you have needs that you would be able to describe?
So this is Rachel. We're currently looking for C-CDAs for quality. We are working on parsing those C-CDAs to provide quality calculations. We've held off on it for years at this point because of the quality of the C-CDAs we were getting. But the demand is so high for the registries to take in C-CDAs that we're going down that track. So we may be prepared at the meeting to take some C-CDAs in, and if y'all want us to calculate a quality measure against it, we should be able to do that. Same thing with kind of FHIR data. We're kind of stuck there too, because it's just the data quality is not where we need it yet, or the bulk data isn't where we need it yet. So, but we think we'll be able to do that this time. The other thing we would like to do is really understand if the C-CDAs are being reconciled more so now, or are they just coming in and being viewed in systems?
Yep. That's what we're definitely trying to get more visibility into, what happens to them when they make it to the threshold, to the doorstep of an EHR. What is happening there? Good. Okay, anybody else? Michael, is there some way that if I worked with you between now and September 14th to get some ideas, like maybe share this deck with you or something, is there some way that you could either write the steps or describe what the basic workflows are that Epic supports in terms of creating and consuming CDA documents?
There may be an option to do that. I mean, so are we just looking for basic? We're not looking for getting into too deep in terms of the technical capabilities like IHE workflow level, right? This is pretty much just generally we have a need to interact with, or a physician needs to do this particular workflow. How do they get the information that they need? Is that kind of what we're thinking?
Yeah, something like that. You know, we have nothing right now, so I would be really excited about, even if you can supply, you know, some high-level description of, here's the options. Here's the options for what you can do if you need to create documents, and here's the options of what you can do if you need to consume them.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good thing to discuss, and I can work with some people here to figure out if we have something we can put together for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even I would take words. You know, if you don't have drawings or things already, even if you just have a set of steps that are described verbally like that, whatever would be easy and reasonable to help us get this dialogue going.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great. Okay, and I'm hounding the other EHR vendors too, but I'm hoping that we would have at least 3, so that we have a good sampling of. I think that we'll have lots of people who have needs in this area. Dr. Jim Grew is coming. He's got an ophthalmology EHR. There's other people who are coming with systems that want to be able to share data more with larger EHRs. So they definitely are coming with wish list views, kind of like what Dynamic Health IT was describing. But I'd also like to have at least 3 of our anchor EHRs to be able to describe what they currently do, so that we can see how these things are starting to fit together. That's helpful. Let's see if anybody else wants to make any comments or ask about this particular area. If not, I will roll on. The next topic is right up the alley of what Rochelle was talking about. We're finding that one of the #1 use cases to cause the flow of information in C-CDA documents is finding ways to reduce the burden of quality measurement. And this challenge of how do we raise the quality of the data that's in the documents so that they are fit for this purpose is something that we're going to be talking about. On Saturday, during our large Q2, Q3 block, we will be joined by Wendy, I think, and maybe Ann. I think I saw Ann on the line. So Ann might want to say something after I introduce this topic, but we're going to have participation from NCQA to talk with us a little bit about some of the challenges here and some of the perspectives about this goal and desire to use data in C-CDA documents for computing quality measures. And we'll also have John DeMore participating from the other company that's name I mix up all the time. I think they are called Diameter Health, and Diameter Health will be talking with us about the example that's up on the C-CDA Examples Task Force site now, where we have found a way to represent quality care compliance in a C-CDA document and how to share that information along with the C-CDA. I put a permalink on here to this example if this is something that seems exciting to you guys and you didn't know about it already. I will put this in the chat right now in case you want to go take a look at it. But Ann, is there anything that else you'd like to say other than that you guys are going to be there and that this is something that you want to participate in the conversation about? Ann might be either muted or not able to speak with us today, but she's, oh, there she is. Hi, Ann.
Sorry,
welcome.
Hi, sorry, I had to drop off for a second, so I didn't hear the question.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I just was mentioning that we're going to have participation from NCQA at the FHIR Connectathon in the C-CDA track, and that you guys are excited about being a part of the conversation and getting this topic opened up to talk more about what we need to address in the way of quality and clarity for the data so that it's really fit for this purpose of supporting quality measurement.
Right. I think like Rochelle said before, we've been seeing a lot more interest in exchanging CDA documents for quality measurement, kind of at all levels between providers and health plans. And so we really want to start that conversation. For those who don't know, when the payers do a HEDIS report, they do have an independent third-party auditor, and it's the auditor's job to look at all the incoming data streams and assess them to make sure that they are valid, accurate, and reliable for the HEDIS reporting. And so we have some feedback from things they've seen. We have a slightly higher standard than CMS with their payment programs because of our independent third-party audit. So we just want to make sure that we can have these data meet the requirements for the payers to be able to use them for HEDIS.
Super. And in meeting with NCQA and preparing for this, we have been identifying a couple things that we'll put on the table to talk through in terms of the structure of information in C-CDA documents. We'd like to have a conversation to clarify for testing and procedures, the difference between performers and authors on that information, clarifying the difference between uses of mood code, EVN, which means actions or acts that have actually taken place and have been performed, versus a mood code of RQO, which is describing acts that have just been ordered but haven't been performed. and then talk a little bit more about the importance of having time information populated in the discrete data that's available in the documents, and possibly even look at what it means for C-CDAs to be digitally signed and to what extent that makes the data better for use with quality measures. So we have a lot of interesting topics planned to talk about in that area, and I haven't figured out exactly how we're going to fit that in across Q2 and Q3. We'll be shuffling that a little bit to optimize it on the day there, but it's definitely going to be covered on Saturday in the middle of the day. And then Saturday evening, as I said, we have some conversations just informally planned around care plan documents and C-CDA on FHIR, and the mapping back and forth between C-CDAs and FHIR. And so Sarah Gaunt and Rick Geimer from Lantana are going to join us for pizza to talk about some of the things and experience that we have with the pharmacy care plan and nutrition care plan, and the C-CDA on FHIR spec that is being updated right now to R4. And then Matt Lord, who heads up the group that's been working on the mappings between C-CDA and FHIR, he'll be there also joining us to talk about that for folks who have interest in those topics. Anybody have any special questions or things that you would want to get on the board today as we prepare for that, so that I can help Rick and Sarah and Matt be prepared to talk about things that are especially relevant to you? Anything goes? Rochelle, I know you guys did care plan documents before at Dynamic Health IT. Would you be interested in looking at the care plan work on Saturday?
Yes, especially if it's going to be required for ambulatory. My understanding is CMS has requested that care plans be in the ambulatory environment. That's going to be a hard push for our clients. So.
Super, and that might drive other people to have interest in it too, so that's good to know. So I wanted to keep it out there. I feel like we had a little bit more interest in care plan documents, but it's not on the radar for everybody yet, so that's why we're addressing it in Q5, and then folks that don't want to spend time on that can go do other things. Anybody else interested in the mapping stuff? Is there anything in particular that people are thinking about with respect to going back and forth between C-CDA and FHIR?
This is Rachel. Just as we get towards our R4 upgrade, we might have some questions, but I think a lot of our questions for the STU3 have been kind of handled at this point. The other thing while I'm speaking, if it's okay, anything related to Commonwealth and an update on what's expected from Commonwealth C-CDAs and where they're headed would be beneficial. And then provenance, please just tell me how to do it.
Yeah, provenance. So we have a whole prep session on, I'm going to kind of scoot on through to the rest of these slides here. So we have a whole session on, this was the stuff on the care plan, care team and clinical notes from last time, but on Wednesday, September 4th, I know that's a tough time because we're all just getting back from Labor Day weekend that week, but that's the spot where we are going to talk about how are we going to take on this topic of talking about provenance, and we'll crack open the template, look a little bit here. It's a great time to help get your questions out. What are you struggling with? What are you wondering about? What is making sense and what doesn't make sense? We have a whole prep session just devoted to that on Wednesday, September 4th. And then at Connectathon, we have one session dedicated to that on Sunday morning. So that is where, right here, Sunday morning Q1, where that will come up again. The conversation tends to go in lots of different directions when we try to talk about it. And at this point, other than allocating time to specifically focus on that and giving people an opportunity to help frame the conversation by asking what they're, helping us be prepared on what your questions and challenges are. If you were going to summarize, like, what would you hope to get out of the implementation-a-thon with respect to provenance? Is there like one main question to try and answer, or what could you contribute, Rachel, to help us shape the conversation?
Last IAT, we talked about putting it on the data elements. We've talked about putting it on the section of the data. We talked about making it part of, the document itself, the whole document having provenance. So that and how it relates to FHIR and what FHIR expects for provenance, and having that in alignment, if at all possible, would be, or at least knowing the differences and why we can do it in FHIR and why we really can't do it in C-CDA the same way, and having that documented so the industry understands what's going on. Because if we are going to take these C-CDAs in via direct and or via a FHIR resource, document resource, then we need to know what each system's doing and what that provenance means to the document as a whole or the individual data elements.
Yeah. Brett Marquardt is going to be joining us on Sunday, and he has been driving that project around basic provenance. So there is an IG, an informative IG that's out for ballot right now. I encourage everybody to read that. If you haven't signed up for the ballot pool, it's too late to be an official voting member, but you can still get access to the PDF document that is under ballot, and your comments would still be very relevant and helpful. I think we'll probably be using that document to kind of center the conversation, maybe challenge spots in it or bump up against that. That's my one idea so far, is that since we do have some good writing put together now around what is provenance and what does it mean, that we'll use that as a starting point.
That's great. That's excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the time when I ask, what did we not talk about today that you guys are wondering about? Is everybody straightened out on registration and logistics? Is there anything else that you have in the way of questions that we could work on as we get prepared? Who spends time in Zulip? Trying to encourage everybody. Make a goal once a day. Try to get to Zulip once a day. See how you do. So it really, the more that we can get people out there when it's active and people are talking to each other and chatting and there's questions and dialogue going back and forth, it becomes a self-driving kind of activity. If you go there and there's nothing going on, then you don't want to keep coming. But if you go there and you can tell that people are there asking, talking to each other, it's really kind of exciting and amazing that you can get so many suggestions and questions and answers all kind of going at the same time. So it's definitely feels like another task to put on your to-do list. I know everybody has a ton of email and Skype and all these other things going on, but the Zulip channel has been very effective for the FHIR community, and I would like to see the CDA community be able to leverage this tool in the same way. Who's had a good experience with FHIR? I mean, with using Zulip in the FHIR community that just might want to echo, like, why would this make sense to get this going for CDA too?
From our team, it's been pretty amazing because there's questions when you have links and you want to share links to things and ask what's the best practice. The FHIR Zulip is extremely active. There's always someone within the day, within an hour, responding to you. If you read something online about something happening with FHIR and you just get a glimpse of it, you can reach out on the different channels that's available and easily get information. We're trying to do the same thing with C-CDA. Like you said, it's just not as active, but I think if the groups that are attending the IAT meetings would check it and contribute their thoughts, it's interesting on the FHIR one that when there's something one person comments, it's not just that one person's comment that is the end all. Other people are reading it. Other founders and leaders in the FHIR industry are giving their 2 cents, and you're able to say things like, well, I thought I heard this from Graham, but then I talked to David and I got this information. What's the agreement there? You really get the facts right when you're able to contribute to that group and ask questions, and also let people know what you're doing so that we do keep the interoperability alive in that process.
And I think, FHIR had to do it because they were bootstrapping themselves. With C-CDA, everyone thinks, oh, the templates are all written, we're just kind of done, read the spec, that's what you can do. But in truth, there's so much still open to be figured out. And the Examples Task Force on Thursday afternoons at 1 o'clock is a perfect example of how you have to talk to each other and work through these things, because the specs are often not clear enough to handle every new case that you come up against. And it takes talking to each other and generating that kind of informal consensus to give us the ability to move forward and get more people doing it in the same way that you want to do it, and you influence others, they influence you. It's a really helpful way to make progress. So keep Zulip on your to-do list every day. Make a little post-it note on your monitor there or something, and just try once a day to check in. I think it will help us a lot. Okay, everybody, it's top of the hour. Thank you very much for all your participation today. We have our next session coming up on Wednesday, August 28th. Many people have questions about section time range. We're going to get into that. We'll be talking about some rendering kinds of issues that are important as we move more to doing things with narrative, and some basic cleanup stuff on how many templates should be asserted and when are they no longer relevant. How do you figure that stuff out? So I look forward to meeting with you next week. We'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.